The morning sun cast long shadows across the Pentagon's corridors as Admiral Jack Morrison strode toward the secure briefing room. 50 years had passed since humanity first joined the Galactic Alliance, and the relationship had grown increasingly complex. What began as humanity's triumphant entry into a community of 12 sentient species had evolved into a delicate balance of diplomacy, trade, and underlying tensions. Morrison's weathered face bore the marks of countless military campaigns across human space. His uniform, adorned with medals from conflicts ranging from the Mars rebellions to the Outer Colony Wars, represented decades of service protecting human interests. Today, however, he faced a different kind of battle, one that threatened the very sovereignty of humanity itself. Ambassador Lisa Carter was already seated when Morrison entered the room. Her diplomatic credentials were impeccable, having negotiated trade agreements with 7 different species and prevented 2 potential conflicts through skillful mediation. Her sharp eyes and composed demeanor had earned her respect throughout the Galactic Senate, but today, those same eyes held a glimmer of concern. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the seal of the Galactic Consular Senate. Nexus Prime, the massive space station that served as the Alliance's political heart, appeared in 3-dimensional detail. The station, built at the gravitational center of the Alliance's core systems, hosted representatives from all 12 member species in a rotating habitat designed to accommodate their diverse biological needs. Admiral Ambassador General Ryan Brooks entered the room, followed by Defense Secretary Helen Ward. "I assume you've both read the preliminary reports?" Morrison nodded grimly. "Resolution 2847X passed 3 days ago. 78% majority." Carter leaned forward. The Volari delegation was particularly vocal in pushing this through. Speaker Zuthmar's arguments about galactic stability and weapons proliferation concerns resonated with several species. 90 days, Morrison said, his voice carrying barely contained anger. "They expect humanity to dismantle our entire defensive infrastructure in 90 days. The resolution's terms were unprecedented in Alliance history. Never before had the Senate demanded a member species completely disarm. The document cited disproportionate military buildup and potential threat to galactic peace as justification. Hidden within the bureaucratic language lay a more sinister implication. Humanity's rapid technological advancement and military capabilities had made other species nervous. Secretary Ward activated another display showing human military assets throughout known space. "Our analysis suggests this goes far beyond simple disarmament fears. Intelligence indicates the Volari have been conducting archaeological surveys in systems we've previously explored." Morrison's jaw tightened. The Architect ruins. The Architects remained one of the galaxy's greatest mysteries. Ancient structures dotted numerous worlds left behind by a civilization that had vanished millions of years ago. Their technology, though inactive, displayed engineering principles that defied current understanding. Humanity had discovered more Architect sites than any other species, and recent studies suggested a peculiar genetic compatibility between human DNA and Architect biolocks. Carter rubbed her temples. "If the Volari suspect we have special access to Architect technology, this resolution makes more sense. Disarm us first, then claim the sites under Galactic protection protocols." "Which is exactly why we can't comply," Morrison declared. "Intelligence from Paul Rogers confirms unusual Volari fleet movements near Kepler 442b, where we discovered the largest intact Architect facility." The room fell silent as the implications settled. Rogers, the government's most trusted intelligence advisor, had spent decades building networks throughout the galaxy. His reports rarely contained speculation, only verified facts that could shift the balance of interstellar politics. "What's our response?" Ward asked. Morrison exchanged glances with Carter. They had discussed this possibility extensively during recent weeks. "We activate Project Safeguard." Carter nodded slowly. "I'll handle the diplomatic angle. We'll need to buy time while revealing the true nature of this resolution to neutral species." Project Safeguard, had been classified at the highest levels for nearly 2 decades. Developed in secret following the discovery of humanity's unique interaction with architect technology, it represented Earth's ultimate defensive contingency. The project had 2 primary components: enhanced defensive systems, incorporating reverse-engineered architect principles, and a comprehensive intelligence network, monitoring potential threats throughout the galaxy. "The President has already been briefed," Ward continued. "She's authorized full implementation." General Brooks activated a series of tactical displays. "Our colonies are already moving to safeguard protocols. Enhanced shields are online at Mars Luna Colony and the outer settlements. New Austin Kepler 186F and Proxima Centauri b have activated their defensive networks." Morrison studied the displays, noting the subtle modifications that had been made to standard human technology. The ships looked familiar, but carried additional components that seemed to pulse with an inner light. "How long until the Valari realize we're not complying?" "They'll know within the week," Carter replied. "I've scheduled a session with the Senate to present our position. We'll propose the Mutual Protection Compact as an alternative." The Mutual Protection Compact represented months of careful planning between diplomatic and military leadership. Rather than disarmament, it proposed a system of shared defensive technologies and joint monitoring of archaeological sites. The proposal included provisions for other species to benefit from architect-derived advancements, with humanity serving as a bridge between ancient technology and modern application. 2 days later, Carter stood before the Galactic Senate's Grand Assembly. The hemispherical chamber could accommodate thousands of beings from across the Alliance. Atmospheric controls maintained separate environmental zones for species with different biological requirements. The aquatic collective's representatives floated in pressurized water spheres, while the crystalline Zephyrians communicated through harmonic frequencies that translated into multiple languages simultaneously. Speaker Zuthmar presided from the central platform, his serpentine form coiled around the ceremonial staff of office. The Valari had held the Senate speakership for 6 standard years, using their position to carefully orchestrate political movements throughout the Alliance. Their species excelled at long-term planning, often thinking in terms of centuries, rather than years or decades. The Senate recognizes Ambassador Carter of Terra. Zuthmar's voice carried the subtle harmonics that made Valari communication so compelling. "You may present humanity's response to Resolution 2847X. Carter rose her voice, carrying clearly throughout the chamber. "Honorable Speaker, esteemed representatives of the Galactic Alliance, humanity appreciates this opportunity to address the Senate's concerns. We believe Resolution 2847X, while well-intentioned, fails to address the complex realities of galactic security." She activated her holographic display, showing the distribution of architect sites throughout known space. Recent archaeological evidence suggests a pattern previously overlooked by our scientific communities. The architects didn't simply vanish. They left behind a network of interconnected facilities designed to preserve certain technological principles for future discovery. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Trilaxian delegation, known for their scholarly pursuits, leaned forward with obvious interest. Even the usually stoic Draconian representatives showed signs of attention. Humanity proposes an alternative, the Mutual Protection Compact. This framework would establish shared research protocols for architect sites, joint defensive strategies against external threats, and collaborative development of beneficial technologies. Zuthmar's response was immediate. Humanity's military buildup exceeds all reasonable defensive requirements. The compact proposal merely formalizes human hegemony over architect technology. Carter had expected this argument. With respect, Speaker, humanity's defensive preparations respond to observable threats. Our intelligence networks have detected unauthorized military movements near protected archaeological sites. The chamber erupted in voices as delegates began debating. Carter noticed subtle signs that suggested several species were reconsidering their support for Resolution 2847X. The feline lyrolites, in particular, seemed engaged in urgent discussions among themselves. Meanwhile, on Luna Colony, Dr. Susan Blake worked alongside Colonel Steve Parker to analyze intercepted Volari communications. Their facility, buried deep beneath the moon's surface, housed some of humanity's most advanced decryption equipment and xenolinguistics experts. The encryption patterns have changed significantly over the past month. Blake explained, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. They're using a base 7 mathematical structure combined with genetic algorithms that adapt in real time. Parker nodded, his military background helping him understand the strategic implications. Any luck breaking through? Some. We've identified what appears to be a two-phase operational plan. Phase 1 involves forcing human disarmament through political pressure. Phase 2. Blake paused, her expression growing troubled. Phase 2. Direct military action against human colonies justified as enforcement of Senate resolutions. They're particularly interested in New Austin and the Kepler 442b installations. Parker immediately activated secure communications. Admiral Morrison needs to know about this immediately. The intelligence reached Morrison within hours, transmitted through quantum encrypted channels that not even Volari technology could intercept. He found himself in his office, staring at the implications of Blake's discoveries. The Volari hadn't simply orchestrated humanity's disarmament for political reasons, they planned to follow it with military conquest. Rogers suspected this, Morrison muttered to himself, reviewing the intelligence advisor's previous reports. Patterns of Volari fleet movements, unusual diplomatic contacts with fringe systems, and increased interest in archaeological survey rights all painted a picture of long-term hostile intent. He activated his secure communication system. Get me President Hamilton, Priority Alpha. Within an hour, Morrison found himself in the White House Situation Room, alongside Carter, who had returned from Nexus Prime via the fastest available transport. President Hamilton, a former admiral herself, listened intently as they presented their findings. Phase 2 also includes something called Archaeological Reclamation Protocol, Carter added. The Volari believe they can activate architect technology through genetic manipulation, but they need human subjects for the biolock interfaces. President Hamilton's expression darkened. They're planning to use humans as living keys to unlock architect facilities. That appears to be their ultimate goal, Morrison confirmed, which explains their interest in disarming us first. Can't extract human test subjects from defended colonies. The president stood, moving to the window overlooking the Capitol. How long until their fleets are in position? Intelligence suggests 6 weeks for full deployment, Morrison replied. They're being careful to avoid detection by other Alliance species. And our safeguard protocols? Carter smiled grimly. Nearly complete. The enhanced defensive systems are online at all major colonies. More importantly, we've made contact with several neutral species who are disturbed by the Volari's unilateral approach. The Trilaxians have privately expressed interest in the Mutual Protection Compact, Morrison added. Their scholars believe joint research would benefit all Alliance species. President Hamilton turned back to them. How do we respond when the Senate demands compliance? We refuse, both Morrison and Carter said simultaneously. And then, Morrison pulled up a tactical display. Then, we demonstrate that humanity's technological advancement serves defensive purposes. Project Safeguard includes more than just shields and weapons. 3 weeks later, the Volari fleet dropped out of hyperspace near New Austin, humanity's most prosperous outer colony. The attack force was massive 87 warships of various classes, supported by invasion transports and archaeological survey vessels. Speaker Zuthmar himself commanded the operation from the flagship Hegemony's Reach. New Austin's defenders seemed pitifully inadequate in comparison. The colony maintained a small fleet of patrol vessels and defensive satellites numbers that suggested easy conquest for the Volari Armada. Begin Phase 2 operations, Zuthmar commanded from his bridge. Target the human defensive installations first. Civilian infrastructure is to be preserved for later exploitation. The Volari fleet opened fire, directing concentrated plasma bursts toward the colony's shield generators and orbital defense platforms. To the attackers' surprise, their weapons encountered an unexpected obstacle. A shimmering barrier of energy, barely visible to standard sensors, enveloped the entire New Austin system. The Volari's most powerful weapons struck the barrier and dissipated harmlessly, their energy simply absorbed and redistributed through the defensive network. "Impossible," hissed one of Zuthmar's tactical officers. "These weren't in any intelligence reports." "Increase firepower," Zuthmar ordered. "Target concentrated points in their defensive grid." As the Volari fleet intensified their attack, the true nature of Safeguard revealed itself. The defensive barriers didn't simply absorb energy, they processed it through architect-derived algorithms and redirected it back at the attackers. Volari ships found themselves struck by their own weapons, their shields failing as overwhelming force returned to them. From New Austin's command center, Colonel Marcus Webb coordinated the defense. "Safeguard protocols are performing beyond expectations," he reported to Admiral Morrison via quantum communication. "The architect-enhanced systems are adapting to their attack patterns in real time." Morrison, monitoring the battle from Earth, felt a surge of satisfaction. Years of secret research had paid off. Humanities scientists had discovered that architect technology wasn't simply advanced, it was evolutionary, designed to grow stronger when challenged. "Sir," Webb continued, "they're breaking formation. Several Volari ships are attempting to withdraw." "Negative. Maintain defensive posture only. We're not here to conquer." The battle raged for 4 hours, but the outcome became increasingly clear. The Volari fleet, despite overwhelming numerical superiority, could not penetrate New Austin's defenses. Worse, their own weapons seemed to strengthen the human barriers with each attack. As frustrated Volari commanders regrouped their forces, a new element entered the battlefield. Human ships, sleek vessels that seemed to bend light around their hulls, emerged from hyperspace behind the Volari fleet. "Admiral Morrison's compliments," Webb announced with obvious satisfaction. "Earth Fleet's Rapid Response Task Force." The human ships didn't immediately attack. Instead, they transmitted a message on all frequencies. "Volari Fleet, you are in violation of Galactic Alliance territorial sovereignty. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Zuthmar's response was predictable. "Human vessels surrender and submit to Senate authority. Your resistance violates Resolution 2847X." What happened next would be remembered as the most decisive space engagement in galactic history. The human task force, comprising only 15 ships against the Volari's 67 remaining vessels, engaged the enemy with weapons that defied conventional understanding. Unlike traditional energy weapons that relied on brute force, human ships employed architect-derived technology that targeted the fundamental molecular structure of opposing vessels. Volari shields designed to deflect or absorb energy proved useless against weapons that eliminated the coherence of matter itself. The first Volari destroyer simply ceased to exist, its atomic structure unraveling at the quantum level. The second ship suffered the same fate within moments. Panic spread through the Volari fleet as commanders realized their technological advantage had evaporated. "Withdraw. All ships emergency jump to designated coordinates." Zuthmar's voice carried across Volari command frequencies, no longer containing its previous confidence. But the human ships had anticipated this response. During the battle, they had deployed quantum interference fields that prevented hyperspace jumps within the system. The Volari fleet found itself trapped, facing an enemy whose capabilities exceeded their worst projections. Colonel Turner of Earth's Special Operations Force led a boarding party onto the damaged Volari flagship. After disabling the ship's command center, he and Dr. Blake began accessing the vessel's data cores. "Admiral," Turner reported to Morrison, "we've gained access to their strategic database. The intelligence was accurate. This was definitely phase 2 of a larger plan." Blake, working alongside alien computer systems with practiced efficiency, uncovered vast amounts of data. The Volari have been systematically surveying architect sites throughout the galaxy. They've identified what appears to be a control network, some kind of master facility that might coordinate all the other sites. Location, Morrison asked. Unknown, but they believe it's in the Alpha Centauri region. Their data suggests the network could revolutionize understanding of space-time manipulation, energy generation, and biological enhancement. Turner discovered additional files containing communications between Zuthmar and other Volari officials. They're planning to use captured humans as test subjects for biolock interfaces. Mass experimentation was scheduled to begin after New Austin's capture. The implications were staggering. The Volari hadn't simply wanted to disarm humanity, they intended to enslave human populations as living tools for activating architect technology. Back on Earth, President Hamilton convened an emergency session with the full Security Council. Morrison and Carter presented the evidence gathered from the Volari vessels, while Rogers provided additional intelligence about Volari activities throughout the galaxy. The situation is worse than we suspected, the President began. The Volari have been operating a long-term strategy to dominate architect technology through exploitation of human genetic compatibility. Secretary Ward nodded grimly. Our analysis suggests they've already conducted preliminary experiments on human traders and colonists who disappeared in Volari space. What's our position moving forward? The President asked. Morrison stood. Madam President, I recommend full activation of safeguard protocols galaxy-wide. We need to protect not just human colonies, but also architect sites that could be misused. Carter added, Diplomatically, we have an opportunity. Several Alliance species are appalled by the Volari's unilateral actions. The attack on New Austin violated numerous Alliance treaties. The Trilaxians and Lyralites have already expressed private support for the Mutual Protection Compact, Rogers confirmed. The Aquatic Collective is wavering, and even the Draconians seem interested in alternatives to Volari hegemony. President Hamilton made her decision. We call an emergency session of the Galactic Senate. We present the evidence of Volari aggression and propose the Mutual Protection Compact as a replacement for Resolution 2847X. And if the Volari refuse to accept the Senate's judgment, Morrison asked, then we demonstrate that humanity's strength lies not in conquest, but in protection. We defend not just ourselves, but any species threatened by predatory behavior. 2 weeks later, President Hamilton stood before the Galactic Senate's emergency assembly. The chamber was packed with representatives from all 12 species present, along with observers from dozens of non-aligned worlds. The atmosphere was electric with tension as various delegations debated in hushed tones. Speaker Zuthmar, returned from the failed New Austin campaign under diplomatic immunity, presided with obvious reluctance. The Serpentine leader's previous confidence had been replaced by barely contained frustration. The Senate recognizes President Hamilton of Terra. Zuthmar announced his harmonics carrying subtle undertones of hostility. Hamilton activated the holographic display, showing detailed records from the captured Volari ships. Honorable representatives, the evidence before us reveals a systematic plan to exploit human genetic traits for unauthorized archaeological purposes. The displays showed Volari fleet movements, communication intercepts, and, most damning, records of human civilians taken for biolock experiments. Several delegates moved uncomfortably as the implications became clear. The attack on New Austin was not an enforcement action. It was attempted conquest based on xenobiological exploitation. Hamilton continued. Humanity proposes the Mutual Protection Compact, not from a position of weakness, but from a commitment to prevent any species from suffering such predatory behavior. The Trilaxian lead delegate, their crystalline form pulsing with complex light patterns, spoke first. The evidence is compelling. The Trilaxian Republic formally supports investigation of these allegations. Other species quickly followed. The Lyralites, whose culture valued individual freedom above collective authority, expressed outrage at the Volari experiments. The Aquatic Collective, initially neutral, declared the evidence too substantial to ignore. Zuthmar attempted to maintain control. These accusations lack proper verification. Human technology could have fabricated this data. Dr. Blake, invited as a technical expert, rose from the observation section. Speaker, I submit to whatever verification process the Senate deems appropriate. The data can be authenticated by neutral parties using any protocols you specify. As the session continued, the balance of power shifted dramatically. Species after species voiced support for the Mutual Protection Compact, while condemnation of Valari actions grew stronger. The draconian ambassador, rarely speaking in Senate sessions, delivered what amounted to a declaration: "The draconian empire finds premeditated exploitation of sentient beings for biological experimentation a violation of fundamental alliance principles. We demand full investigation and appropriate penalties." When the vote came, the results were overwhelming. The Mutual Protection Compact passed with 87% support, while a resolution condemning the Valari actions and demanding reparations passed with 91% approval. Only the Valari themselves and 2 minor allied species voted against the measures. Zuthmar's expression of barely controlled rage suggested this political defeat cut deeper than any military loss. "The Valari Republic reserves all rights under Alliance law," he declared before storming from the chamber with his delegation. Hamilton concluded her address with a statement that would be quoted throughout galactic history. "Humanity offers our architect-enhanced technologies not as instruments of domination, but as tools of protection for all Alliance species. We have learned that true strength lies not in the ability to conquer, but in the wisdom to defend." 6 months later, the first Joint Architect Research Facility opened on Trilaxian Prime. Human scientists worked alongside researchers from 7 different species, sharing knowledge that had previously been restricted to single civilizations. The breakthrough discoveries that emerged would revolutionize everything from medicine to interstellar travel. Morrison and Carter stood on Luna Colony's observation deck, watching Earth turn slowly below them. The enhanced defensive systems were now permanent fixtures, their subtle energy patterns creating aurora-like displays in the upper atmosphere. "The Valari haven't given up," Carter observed. "Intelligence suggests they're forming alliances with fringe groups outside the main alliance." Morrison nodded. "But they're no longer the threat they once were. The other species are watching them too closely now. And humanity? We've found our place in the galaxy. Not as conquerors or subjects, but as guardians of something greater than ourselves." In the depths of space, architect technology continued its patient evolution, activated not by force or exploitation, but by the collaborative spirit of species working together. The ancient network, dormant for millions of years, began to respond to this new partnership between civilizations. The Valari's attempt to disarm humanity had backfired spectacularly. Instead of weakening human influence, it had revealed the true nature of Valari ambitions, while demonstrating humanity's commitment to protective rather than aggressive use of advanced technology. As the galaxy entered a new era of cooperation and shared research, one thing became clear: the greatest discoveries require not just knowledge, but wisdom. And wisdom, as the architects had perhaps always known, emerges not from domination, but from unity. The galactic map now showed a very different picture than it had a year earlier. Human colonies, once viewed as potential threats, had become centers of learning and cooperation. Architect sites across the galaxy operated under joint supervision, their secrets gradually revealing themselves to species mature enough to handle such power responsibly. The Valari Republic, isolated by their own actions, faced a choice: adapt to this new paradigm, or remain forever on the margins of galactic civilization. Some Valari individuals, disgusted by their government's actions, had already defected to work with the Alliance research teams. Speaker Zuthmar, removed from his position by his own people following political upheaval, lived in exile on a distant world. The Valari's new leadership had begun tentative overtures toward reconciliation, but trust would take generations to rebuild. Morrison retired from active military service, but continued to oversee the safeguard protocols, now expanded to include defensive support for any Alliance species facing external threats. His career, which began with humanity's first steps into galactic society, had evolved into something he never anticipated: architect of a new model for interstellar cooperation. Carter became the Alliance's first Director of Cooperative Relations, a position created specifically to manage the complex web of shared research projects and mutual defense agreements. Her diplomatic skills, once used to navigate human interest through alien bureaucracy, now served to balance the needs of a dozen different civilizations. The Mutual Protection Compact proved more successful than even its creators had hoped. Within 2 years, every Alliance species had contributed something unique to the collective pool of knowledge. The Draconians shared their mastery of quantum mechanics, the Trilaxians offered advances in crystalline information storage, and the Aquatic Collective provided biological insights that revolutionized medical science. Humanity's contribution remained the bridge to architect technology, but this was no longer viewed as a source of fear or envy. Instead, it became the foundation for unprecedented cooperation between species that had previously viewed each other with suspicion or indifference. The first successful activation of an architect facility occurred on Kepler 442b, 3 years after the New Austin incident. The ancient structure, responding to the combined efforts of multiple species, revealed technology that rendered faster-than-light travel as simple as stepping through a doorway. Yet rather than rushing to exploit this discovery, the Alliance species proceeded carefully, ensuring the technology would benefit all equally. As the years passed, the galaxy transformed. Trade networks that once took months now operated in real time. Medical advances derived from architect biotechnology eliminated diseases that had plagued various species for millennia. Clean energy generation based on principles the architects had encoded in their structures ended resource conflicts that had simmered for generations. The Volari event, as historians later called it, became a turning point in galactic civilization. What began as an attempt to subjugate humanity through forced disarmament resulted in the most successful period of interspecies cooperation in recorded history. In secure archives on Nexus Prime documents from that period tell a simple story. The Galactic Consular Senate tried to disarm humanity, but Earth's response left them speechless. However, the true legacy wasn't in humanity's military demonstration or diplomatic victory, but in the vision of a galaxy where ancient wisdom and modern cooperation could unlock the universe's greatest secrets. The architects, whoever they had been, had designed their technology to respond not to force or cleverness, but to unity of purpose. In trying to divide humanity from its allies, the Volari had inadvertently created the very conditions the architects had been waiting for: a galactic civilization mature enough to inherit their legacy. And in that inheritance lay the promise of even greater discoveries as the galaxy prepared to take its next evolutionary step toward whatever lay beyond the stars.